Stone, cold, immovable, yet screaming with a silence older than empires. On the Giza Plateau, where desert wind cuts like knives, three mountains of limestone rise, not carved by nature, but assembled block by block, each one weighing more than a car, dragged across sand by hands that bled under the sun 4,500 years ago. They told us these were tombs, simple graves for kings who called themselves gods. But step inside and the air thickens, the corridors too narrow, the chambers too stark, the shafts aimed not at earth but at the stars themselves. No body has ever been found within the Great Pyramid. No inscriptions sing its owner's name across its walls. Only precision so exact it mocks modern engineering, joints so tight a razor cannot slip between them. How were stones hauled from quarries miles away, lifted into place with mathematical perfection? Ramps? Ropes? Or knowledge long buried beneath the sands? Look closer. Shafts aligned with Orion's belt, voids hidden deep within its core, energy locked in geometry as if the structure itself were alive. The pyramids do not speak, but their silence roars, shaking the foundations of history, whispering a question too dangerous to ignore. On the edge of the Egyptian desert, just west of the Nile, lies a plateau of limestone that has carried the weight of human awe for more than 45 centuries. The Giza Plateau, bare and severe, became the canvas upon which Egypt's kings of the 4th dynasty inscribed their vision of eternity. From 2580 to 2500 BCE, stone by stone, block by block, the most colossal monuments ever built by human hands rose above the desert floor. To this day, they stand with a precision and grandeur that have defied the centuries, unbroken by flood, by war, or by time itself. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, towering originally at 146.6 meters, dominated the skyline when it was completed around 2560 BCE. Its mass consumed 2.3 million blocks of limestone and granite, some weighing over 70 tons, quarried, hauled, and set into place with a care so exact that the joints between blocks average less than a millimeter. It was not merely tall, it was deliberate, aligned to the cardinal directions with an accuracy unmatched by later civilizations. For over 3,800 years, no human construction rose higher, until the spire of Lincoln Cathedral in England surpassed it in 1311 CE. Yet even then, the pyramid remained unique, a mountain of geometry, fused with cosmic intention. To the southwest, Khafre, Khufu's son, ordered his own pyramid to rise, slightly smaller in height, yet built on higher ground, giving it an illusion of superiority. His complex added a guardian unlike anything before, the colossal limestone statue we call the Sphinx. Khafre's pyramid still preserves traces of its original polished casing stones at its apex, gleaming remnants of the once white surface that reflected the sun like fire, visible for miles across the Nile Valley. The third of the Great Triad, the Pyramid of Menkaure, is humbler in size, only 65 meters in height, but no less deliberate. Its base courses were encased not in limestone, but in granite brought from Aswan, nearly 900 kilometers upriver, signaling ambition that stretched across the breadth of the kingdom. Together, the three pyramids formed a statement of power unmatched in the ancient world. They were not isolated monuments, but part of vast complexes, mortuary temples, causeways, satellite pyramids, and subsidiary tombs for queens and officials. Their placement across the plateau was not random. The axes of each pyramid align with uncanny precision, forming a triad that has prompted centuries of speculation about whether they were arranged with astronomical intent, echoing the belt stars of Orion. The plateau became not simply a necropolis, but a landscape reshaped into an eternal stage, where stone, sky, and ritual met in unyielding harmony. The sheer labor involved in their construction has long stirred human imagination. Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BCE, reported that Khufu conscripted 100,000 men, laboring in 3-month shifts over a span of 20 years. Later evidence corrected him. Excavations at the workers' village southeast of the pyramids revealed not slaves driven by whips, but a permanent community of skilled laborers, craftsmen, and seasonal farmers, fed on cattle, fish, and bread, supported by a state apparatus that organized and sustained this immense workforce. Burial shafts near the pyramids contain the skeletons of these laborers, some with healed injuries that testify to medical care, showing they were not expendable but valued contributors to a project that transcended lifetimes. Khufu's pyramid, stripped of its smooth Tara limestone casing by centuries of quarrying, now reveals its core of rugged blocks. Yet in its prime, it was clad in a mantle of white stone so polished that sunlight reflected with a brilliance that would have blazed across the desert. From the Nile's banks, the structure would have risen like a frozen flame, its geometry immaculate, its lines unbroken. Ancient texts called these pyramids Ake, horizons, places where earth met sky, where the king ascended to join the gods. Inside the Great Pyramid, the passages and chambers are stark. The descending corridor leads deep into the bedrock, to an unfinished subterranean chamber whose purpose remains uncertain. Higher above lies the so-called Queen's Chamber, small, enigmatic, its narrow shafts aligned with stars sacred to the Egyptians. Rising further, the Grand Gallery stretches upward, a passage of corbelled stonework unlike anything else in the ancient world, leading to the King's Chamber. Built of red granite from Aswan, the chamber holds a lidless sarcophagus, rough in finish, yet massive, hewn from a single block and placed before the pyramid was sealed. Above it, 5 relieving chambers stacked one upon another bear Khufu's name, painted in red ochre, the only direct evidence within the pyramid tying it to him. Khufu's pyramid complex demonstrates a different balance of form and function. Its mortuary temple at the base was constructed with megalithic limestone blocks weighing up to 400 tons. From there, a long causeway stretched to the valley temple by the Nile, a place where rituals for the deceased king were enacted. The Sphinx, carved from the bedrock of the plateau, became the eternal sentinel of Khufu's pyramid, its leonine body and human head embodying both power and divine guardianship. The statue measures 73 meters in length and 20 meters in height, carved with such mastery that even after millennia of erosion, its presence remains commanding. Menkaur's pyramid, though smaller, carried symbolic weight. Its granite casing at the base was left incomplete at his death, yet the effort alone, transporting massive granite blocks over hundreds of kilometers, reflects the same monumental will. Menkaur's mortuary temple later became the site of later additions, even into the Sate period, centuries after its completion. It stood not as a diminished echo of his predecessors, but as a deliberate continuation of the pyramid tradition, closing the age of colossal pyramid building on Giza's plateau. The Giza pyramids endure because they embody contradictions. They are both stark and intricate, massive yet precise, stripped of ornament, yet saturated with symbolism. They were tombs, yet no bodies remain within them. They were monuments to kings, yet their scale transcends the human, pulling the mind toward cosmic order. Each stone locked in place was not a mere block, but a statement of permanence, part of a geometry so exact it has survived earthquakes, floods, and human dismantling. The plateau itself became a city of the dead, but not silent. The temples bustled with priests conducting rites, offerings of food and drink presented daily to nourish the king's spirit. Processions ascended the causeways, chants echoed in chambers, smoke from incense curled upward, binding earth and sky. For the Egyptians, death was not an end but a continuation, and the pyramid was not simply a tomb but a machine of eternity, built to ensure the pharaoh's transformation into an eternal star among the heavens. And yet, centuries passed. The polished casing stones were stripped for Cairo's mosques and palaces. The sarcophagi lay empty. The pyramids stood hollowed, stripped of treasures, their kings long gone. But the stones remained. They remained when empires fell, when invaders came and left, when time itself corroded every other achievement of the ancient world. They remained when the 7 wonders of the ancient world crumbled into dust, temples burned, statues toppled, gardens vanished. The pyramids alone endured. To stand before them is to confront not myth, but fact. They exist. They were built by human hands, in a specific time, for a specific purpose. And yet, even with every excavation, every survey, every analysis, they refuse to yield their full truth. They rise on the Giza plateau as they have for 45 centuries, colossal, unbroken, immutable, silent witnesses that history itself has not dared to erase. Around 2600 BCE, Egypt entered an age of architectural ambition unmatched in its history. The fourth dynasty pharaohs, Sneferu, Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure, commanded projects so vast that they reshaped both the landscape of Giza and the very limits of human engineering. At the center of this era stood the Great Pyramid of Khufu, raised around 2560 BCE, a monument requiring resources, organization, and technical mastery that even now defies comprehension. It was an age where stone was not just quarried, it was conquered. The first task was manpower. For centuries, ancient accounts told of endless lines of slaves dragging stones under the lash. Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BCE, described vast numbers, hundreds of thousands, laboring under tyranny. That image endured for millennia, reinforced by later writers who painted the pyramids as monuments of cruelty. But archaeology has stripped away that myth. Excavations near the Giza Plateau in the 20th century uncovered the remains of workers' villages, rows of houses, bakeries, breweries, and large-scale facilities capable of feeding thousands daily. Evidence revealed cattle bones, fish remains, and bread ovens, suggesting a diet designed to sustain strength, not misery. Tomb inscriptions describe work crews with names that carried pride, such as the Drunkards of Menkaure or the Friends of Khufu. Far from slaves, these were Egyptians, farmers, craftsmen, and specialists, organized into rotating shifts, serving their king in life as they believed he would serve them in death. The scale of the workforce was immense. Estimates suggest between 20,000 and 30,000 permanent laborers worked at Giza, with tens of thousands more joining seasonally during the Nile's inundation, when farmlands lay submerged. Farmers, unable to sow or harvest, redirected their labor to the king's eternal project. This mobilization was not random. It was the very structure of the Egyptian state at work, a system where labor was tax, where service was both obligation and devotion. And in that structure, every stone lifted was a pledge to eternity. The quarrying itself was a feat of brutal precision. Local limestone, cut from the very bedrock of Giza, provided the bulk of the pyramid's mass. Copper chisels, pounding stones, and wooden mallets were the tools, simple, yet wielded with relentless efficiency. Quarry marks still scar the plateau, silent scars of blocks torn from the earth. For the casing stones, a different source was required. Tura limestone, gleaming white and polished smooth, quarried across the Nile and ferried on wooden boats to the construction site. For the internal chambers, harder still, granite was brought from Aswan, nearly 900 kilometers upriver. Some of these granite blocks, weighing up to 70 tons, were hauled on sledges, dragged across sand moistened to reduce friction, a technique confirmed by traces of sled marks and recent experiments in desert physics. The logistics of movement demanded innovation. Reliefs from later periods depict sledges pulled by teams, water poured in front to harden the sand and ease the drag. Rope, levers, and manpower did what no machine could. Each block, weighing several tons, had to be transported, raised, and placed within tolerances so fine that four sides of the Great Pyramid deviate less than 5 centimeters in length. The base covers 13 acres, and yet its alignment to true north is within a fraction of a degree, a precision achieved without compass or steel. How the blocks were raised remains contested. Straight ramps stretching from quarry to summit would have required structures longer than the pyramid itself, an engineering project equal to the monument. Some argue for zigzagging ramps along the pyramid's faces, reducing length but complicating hauling. Others propose spiral ramps coiling upward, hidden as construction rows. Theories abound: internal ramps, counterweights, levering systems, but no consensus has silenced the debate. What is certain is that millions of stones ascended, year after year, in a system so efficient that Khufu's pyramid rose to completion within 2 decades. The Grand Gallery inside the Great Pyramid reveals the architectural sophistication of the builders. Rising 46 meters long and 8.6 meters high, its corbelled walls are stacked in 7 stages, each layer projecting inward to reduce weight. This design distributed pressure away from the passage, ensuring stability for millennia. Above the king's chamber, 5 relieving chambers built of granite bear the crushing weight of the pyramid's core. Here, the engineering is not accidental but deliberate, calculated responses to forces that would have collapsed lesser constructions. Even the organization of labor carried precision. Teams of workers were divided into crews of about 2,000, subdivided into smaller gangs with identifiable names. Graffiti left by these gangs within the pyramid includes inscriptions like the Friends of Khufu, a testament to the identity and pride of those who labored. Their community on the plateau had bakeries producing thousands of loaves daily, breweries yielding vast quantities of beer, and cattle herds slaughtered to provide meat. This was not exploitation without reward. It was a national endeavor, supported by a system that fed, housed, and honored its workers. The pyramids consumed not only stone but human willpower organized at a scale never before seen. Estimates suggest that 340 stones were set each day to complete Khufu's pyramid within his reign, a relentless pace requiring flawless coordination. Stonecutters carved, haulers dragged, masons leveled, overseers measured. The rhythm of construction pulsed without pause. Every block had its place, and each placement demanded perfection. Errors could not be tolerated. Misaligned courses would compromise stability. The very survival of the structure depended on discipline as rigid as the stones themselves. Modern engineers continue to measure themselves against these feats. With cranes, machinery, and steel, the lifting of multi-ton stones is possible, but the logistics of millions of such placements remain staggering. The pyramid was not a singular achievement, but a system. Thousands of tasks coordinated across decades, sustained by administration, resources, and an unshakable belief in the pharaoh's divinity. This was the Egypt of the Old Kingdom: centralized power, prosperity driven by the Nile cycles, and rulers who commanded not only wealth but vision. The pyramids were possible not because of brute force alone, but because an entire civilization was aligned toward their creation. Their construction was the expression of a social order where pharaoh, priest, and farmer were bound in purpose. Each stone locked in place was not only engineering but theology, a belief rendered in architecture that the pharaoh would ascend to the stars and carry his people with him in eternity. Yet what makes these structures endure in human imagination is not only their size, but the unanswered questions of how such coordination was sustained. How workers endured the relentless weight of labor, how ramps were constructed and dismantled, how granite was raised to impossible heights. All remain subjects of debate. The pyramids are not mute. They speak through tool marks, through graffiti, through ruins of bakeries and barracks. But they do not speak fully. They hold back their final methods, leaving only traces of the extraordinary processes that built them. The stones remain, silent yet uncompromising, bearing the proof of a civilization's mastery. Every block bears the mark of hands that moved it, muscles straining, voices shouting, ropes tightening. Every chamber carries the imprint of minds that calculated weight, stress, and alignment without blueprint or metal tool. The pyramids were built not with mystery, but with relentless order, with systems of labor and logistics that turned human effort into permanence. And though theories shift and debates continue, the fact remains. In the 4th dynasty, Egypt achieved the impossible, and the monuments stand as proof. For centuries, the Pyramids of Giza have been explained in the simplest of terms: tombs for kings, eternal resting places built to carry pharaohs into the afterlife. That interpretation rests on firm ground within Egyptian religion. The Old Kingdom rulers, Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure, saw themselves not merely as men, but as gods in waiting, embodiments of Horus in life and destined to merge with Osiris and the imperishable stars in death. To ensure this transformation, a pyramid was more than stone piled into form. It was part of a funerary complex, a complete system of temples, causeways, and ritual spaces designed to perpetuate kingship forever. Each pyramid was tied to a mortuary temple at its base, where priests conducted daily rituals of offering bread, beer, cattle, incense, nourishment for the eternal ka of the deceased king. Long causeways, paved and decorated, extended from these temples down to valley temples near the Nile. In those lower temples, the embalmed body of the pharaoh would first arrive by boat, drawn ashore in solemn ceremony before being carried along the causeway to its pyramid. The architecture itself carried meaning. The valley temple tied the king to the fertile floodplain of the Nile. The causeway stretched like a symbolic bridge, and the pyramid, massive and unyielding, anchored his eternity in stone. Traditional Egyptology places the Giza pyramids firmly in this framework. Khufu's pyramid, finished around 2560 BCE, forms the centerpiece of a vast funerary complex including subsidiary pyramids for queens, mastaba tombs for high officials, boat pits containing dismantled solar barks, and the great mortuary temple at its eastern face. Khufu's pyramid, built slightly later around 2520 BCE, is joined with his valley temple and causeway and stands guarded by the Great Sphinx. Menkaur's pyramid completes the triad around 2490 BCE, smaller but also accompanied by temples and smaller satellite pyramids. Together, these were not isolated structures. They were sacred landscapes designed for eternity. And yet, questions cut through this narrative. For all their scale and perfection, the Giza pyramids lack what later tombs display in abundance: decoration, inscriptions, and treasures intended to guide and protect the deceased. In the Valley of the Kings, beginning in the New Kingdom centuries later, the tomb walls are drenched in painted scenes of gods, underworld journeys, spells from the Book of the Dead. Coffins shimmered with gold, burial chambers swelled with statues, amulets, food, and drink, all symbols of eternal life. In contrast, the interiors of the Giza pyramids are bare. The king's chamber in Khufu's pyramid is stark granite. The queen's chamber is undecorated. The subterranean chamber remains unfinished. There are no painted texts, no carved scenes, no treasures left within. This stark absence has ignited debate. Were the pyramids truly tombs, or were they something more? No intact royal burial has ever been found inside the three Great Pyramids. Khufu's sarcophagus lies empty, its lid missing, its chamber stripped. Khufu's burial chamber is plain, its granite sarcophagus unadorned. Menkaur's chamber held a basalt sarcophagus, discovered in the 19th century, but it too was empty, and the sarcophagus itself sank with the ship Beatrice while being transported to Britain in 1838. Some scholars argue that looting explains the emptiness, that centuries of theft erased all trace of burial goods. Egypt was plagued by tomb robbers as early as the First Intermediate Period, and the pyramids would have been tempting targets. Yet others point out that the lack of inscriptions, texts, or decoration inside the pyramids sets them apart from every later royal tomb in Egypt, raising doubts about whether they ever contained elaborate burials at all. The religious symbolism of the pyramids' shape itself complicates the picture. The Egyptians called pyramids mer, but their meaning extended beyond function. The pyramid's form echoes the Benben, the primeval mound that rose from the waters of chaos at the creation of the world. Its four sides slope upward, converging into a single point that reflects the rays of the sun. For the Egyptians of the Old Kingdom, the pyramid may not have been just a tomb. It was a cosmic engine, a stairway for the king's soul to ascend to the heavens, joining the undying stars of the northern sky. Shafts within Khufu's pyramid align with specific constellations: Orion, associated with Osiris, and stars of the northern circumpolar sky, associated with immortality. These alignments suggest that the pyramid was as much about transformation into divinity as it was about burial. Archaeological evidence reinforces both perspectives. The pyramid complexes contain mortuary temples where priests maintained cults of the dead king for centuries after his reign, supporting the tomb interpretation. Yet the bare interiors, the absence of funerary texts, and the astronomical alignments suggest a broader purpose. The pyramid as a theological machine, linking king, cosmos, and eternity. The funerary rituals at the temples fed the ka of the king, but the pyramid itself may have been intended to launch his ba, his soul, into the heavens. Scholars remain divided. Mainstream Egyptology continues to classify the pyramids as tombs, pointing to the presence of sarcophagi, the layout of mortuary temples, and the tradition of royal burials. Alternative theories argue they were not simply tombs, but symbols of kingship on a scale so vast they became eternal statements of cosmic order. Some even suggest that the empty chambers indicate they were cenotaphs, monuments to kings, but not their actual burial sites. Others go further still, speculating that they served ritual or ceremonial functions beyond death. The tension lies in the contrast between later Egyptian tombs and the Old Kingdom pyramids. In the Valley of the Kings, beginning around 1500 BCE, royal tombs are hidden, carved into cliffs, covered in texts and images to ensure safe passage through the underworld. In contrast, the Giza pyramids stand exposed, monumental, undecorated, silent. If both traditions serve the same purpose, why are they so radically different? Did Egyptian religious beliefs shift, or was the pyramid never primarily intended as a burial chamber? Even the names of the pyramids reflect a dual meaning. Khufu's pyramid was called Ake Khufu, meaning horizon of Khufu. Khafre's was the great is Khafre. Menkaur's, Menkor is divine. These names do not emphasize death, but power, horizon, divinity, cosmic permanence. The pyramid, in its essence, was a horizon, a place where the sun rose and set, where the king could merge with Ra, the sun god, and achieve immortality. Death may have been the occasion, but eternity was the goal. The debate is sharpened by the fact that no Old Kingdom pyramid has ever yielded a preserved royal mummy. The earliest intact royal mummies come from later periods, long after the Pyramid Age. Whether through looting, deliberate removal, or a different conception of burial, the pyramids stand empty. That emptiness is both fact and riddle. Proof of their function as tombs is incomplete, yet their symbolic and religious weight is undeniable. What remains undeniable is that the pyramids embodied the most powerful synthesis of state, religion, and architecture the ancient world had ever known. They were tombs in the sense that they anchored the dead king to eternity, yet their scale and symbolism far exceeded the needs of burial. They were horizons in stone, fusions of theology and geometry, vast expressions of a civilization's faith that a king could transcend mortality. And whether they once held bodies or not, their presence continues to speak of a purpose larger than death, a purpose that still resists full definition. Beneath the towering bulk of the Great Pyramid lies a labyrinth of chambers and passageways whose very existence challenges ordinary expectations of a tomb. The interior of Khufu's pyramid, begun around 2580 BCE, is unlike anything constructed before or after it. It is not a simple burial vault sealed in stone. It is a complex of corridors, shafts, and vast empty spaces that appear designed with an intricacy equal to the structure's staggering exterior. For centuries, scholars, engineers, and adventurers have walked within its shadowed corridors, attempting to define their function, yet every stone seems to resist final explanation. The entrance lies on the north face, about 17 meters above the original base, leading into the descending passage. Narrow, low, and sloping downward for over 100 meters, this tunnel drives straight into the bedrock beneath the pyramid. Its path terminates in an unfinished subterranean chamber, rough-hewn and incomplete. This chamber, lying some 30 meters below the plateau's surface, offers no clear evidence of ritual purpose, no decorations, no sarcophagus, no inscriptions. The labor invested in cutting it raises questions. Was this an abandoned burial chamber, or a symbolic gesture to the underworld? Egyptologists remain divided, noting that Khufu's successors never imitated such a feature again. Above this passageway, branching upward, lies the ascending corridor, leading to one of the most studied spaces in the pyramid, the so-called Queen's Chamber. Positioned at the heart of the pyramid's vertical axis, this chamber is modest in scale, with a corbelled roof forming a pointed ceiling. Despite its modern name, there is no evidence that it ever housed a queen. No sarcophagus was found inside, and no remains. What it does possess are two shafts, barely 20 centimeters wide, extending from the north and south walls. When first noted in the 19th century, these shafts did not reach the pyramid's exterior but stopped short, sealed within the stone. The suggestion that they were air vents was immediately unsatisfying. A sealed vent serves no function. Later, in the 1960s and 1990s, their true alignment began to be studied. The southern shaft appears to point toward the belt of Orion as it would have appeared in the 26th century BCE, while the northern shaft aligns roughly with the circumpolar stars, celestial bodies associated in Egyptian belief with the eternal, undying realm. The idea of astronomical function, rather than ventilation, began to reshape interpretations. Beyond the Queen's Chamber, the ascending passage continues to the Grand Gallery, one of the most astonishing architectural features in ancient construction. Nearly 47 meters long and 8 meters high, this soaring corridor is built with precision-cut corbelled blocks rising in 7 levels of projection. Its smooth floor and raised side platforms suggest functional intent. Some archaeologists believe it served as a grand ramp to slide the granite blocks of the king's chamber into position. Others point to its precise alignment and suggest ritual symbolism. At the upper end lies a small antechamber, with grooves that may have held portcullis blocks to seal the chamber beyond. The king's chamber itself, constructed entirely of massive red granite quarried and transported from Aswan, is a masterpiece of ancient engineering. Each wall is composed of monolithic blocks weighing up to 80 tons. Inside lies a single granite sarcophagus, large and heavy, too wide to fit through the passageways, meaning it was placed there during construction before the chamber was sealed. Above this chamber lie 5 narrow, relieving chambers, stacked one above the other, designed to divert the crushing weight of the pyramid away from the chamber below. In 1837, British explorer Colonel Howard Vyse entered these chambers and discovered painted quarry marks bearing the name of Khufu, settling the debate over whose pyramid this truly was. Yet the king's chamber is starkly undecorated. No hieroglyphs, no funerary texts, no murals, nothing that resembles the richly ornamented tombs of later dynasties in the Valley of the Kings. Its emptiness provokes lingering doubts about its function. The shafts of the king's chamber add further intrigue. Unlike those of the queen's chamber, these extend fully to the pyramid's exterior. The southern shaft aligns with Orion's belt, while the northern aligns with the pole star of the time, Thuban. Their precision suggests more than chance. For a civilization whose theology tied the pharaoh's afterlife to a cosmic ascent among the stars, these shafts may have been symbolic pathways for the king's spirit, connecting his stone house on earth with the eternal heavens. Outside the pyramid itself, the plateau holds further revelations. At the base of Khufu's pyramid, archaeologists have uncovered 5 enormous boat pits. In 1954, one of them yielded a fully dismantled cedarwood vessel, 43 meters long, later painstakingly reconstructed. This solar bark, buried beside the pyramid in thousands of pieces, was likely intended to transport the king's soul with the sun god Ra across the heavens. The craftsmanship of the boat, built without metal nails and designed for symbolic rather than practical use, stands as further evidence that the pyramid was part of a vast religious complex, not merely an inert tomb. In recent years, technology has carried investigation further than human hands could reach. In 2017, scientists using muon radiography, a technique that tracks subatomic particles as they pass through matter, detected a massive hidden void above the Grand Gallery. At least 30 meters long, this space has never been accessed by modern explorers. Whether it is a construction cavity, a symbolic void, or another chamber altogether remains uncertain. The discovery has reignited debates over whether the pyramid conceals more undiscovered passages, chambers, or functions. Despite centuries of study, its internal complexity continues to expand rather than diminish. What emerges from these architectural layers is a monument not reducible to a single interpretation. The unfinished chamber below ground, the misplaced Queen's Chamber, the soaring Grand Gallery, the precise astronomical shafts, the stark but monumental King's Chamber, the concealed voids still inaccessible, all suggest planning that transcends simple burial practice. The pyramid's interior design reflects an interplay of engineering, religious symbolism, and astronomical observation unmatched in later Egyptian architecture. Even now, its corridors continue to whisper questions that refuse closure, turning every new discovery into another thread woven into an unresolved tapestry of intent. The pyramids at Giza rise from the desert not only as monuments of stone, but as instruments of precision, carved into alignment with the universe itself. Their orientation is so exact, so meticulously measured, that it has continued to astonish astronomers, architects, and historians for centuries. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, built around 2550 BCE, does not simply face in any random direction. Its sides are aligned almost perfectly with the cardinal points of the compass: north, south, east, and west. The margin of error is less than 4 arc minutes, a level of precision so extraordinary that even with modern tools it would be difficult to surpass. To achieve such accuracy over 4,500 years ago required not chance, but a mastery of observation, mathematics, and skywatching that defined the intellectual world of ancient Egypt. Egyptologists have long debated how such orientation was accomplished. Some suggest the builders tracked the circumpolar stars, those that never set, eternally circling the northern sky. By marking their rising and setting points on the horizon, they could establish a true north more accurate than any magnetic compass. Others argue that the shadow of the sun, measured with a gnomon, guided them in finding the meridian. What remains undeniable is that their measurements were consistent across the plateau, linking Khufu's pyramid with those of Khafre and Menkaure in a unified scheme that could only have been conceived with astronomical intent. Theories extend beyond orientation to the very placement of the pyramids themselves. In 1994, Robert Bauval and Adrian Gilbert introduced what became known as the Orion correlation theory. They argued that the 3 pyramids of Giza mirrored the 3 stars of Orion's belt: Alnitak, Alnilam, and Mintaka. To them, the resemblance was not coincidence. Orion, associated with Osiris, god of rebirth and the afterlife, was central to Egyptian religious thought. If the pharaoh was to ascend to the heavens and unite with the gods, aligning his eternal tomb with the belt of Orion was no small gesture. According to Bauval, the Nile itself was the earthly counterpart of the Milky Way, and Giza was its cosmic map. Critics have challenged the precision of this correlation, pointing out discrepancies in scale and spacing. Yet the theory persists, not because of flawless geometry, but because it reflects the Egyptians' profound effort to bind earth and sky, king and cosmos, life and eternity. Equally powerful is the symbolism of the sun. The pyramid's very form, a massive stairway tapering upward, echoes the solar rays descending from the heavens. In Egyptian texts, the king ascends to the sky along the sunbeams, joining Ra in his daily voyage across the firmament. The western location of Giza, where the sun sets, carried funerary meaning. It was the land of the dead, where the sun vanished each evening before being reborn at dawn. To orient the pyramid toward the cardinal directions was also to synchronize it with the eternal cycle of the sun, rising in the east, setting in the west, commanding the heavens with unbroken regularity. The shafts within the Great Pyramid reinforce these cosmic connections. The so-called air shafts of the king's chamber and the queen's chamber do not merely ventilate. Their narrow passages extend toward the sky, aligned with specific constellations visible around 2500 BCE. The northern shaft of the king's chamber pointed to Thuban, the pole star of that era, while the southern shaft aligned with Orion. In the queen's chamber, one shaft faced Sirius, the star linked to the goddess Isis, and the other extended toward Orion once again. Whether these shafts were symbolic passageways for the soul of the king or precise astronomical markers, their existence demonstrates the obsession with aligning human death to celestial cycles. This connection between pyramid and cosmos also reveals itself in subtle measurements. Scholars note that the base of Khufu's pyramid, when divided by its height, produces a ratio close to 2 pi, suggesting knowledge of the circle's relationship to its diameter. Whether intentional or coincidental, such harmonies fueled interpretations of the pyramid as more than a tomb. It was a cosmic machine, a mathematical expression of the order of the universe, the Egyptian concept of Ma'at. Even if these geometric relations arose from practical building needs, their alignment with cosmic principles could not have escaped the notice of a culture so attuned to the heavens. The precision was not isolated to Giza alone. At Heliopolis, the center of the sun cult, obelisks were erected as physical representations of sunbeams. The pyramids echoed this solar architecture on a massive scale, tying the pharaoh's afterlife with the same divine forces. In funerary texts, the king sails with Ra, fights alongside him against the serpent Apophis, and rises with him each morning. To face the pyramids toward the cardinal directions was to bind the king's eternity to the daily triumph of light over darkness. Yet the purpose of these alignments may not have been purely symbolic. Some argue they had a practical function, ensuring the pharaoh's spiritual path to the stars remained unbroken, or aligning rituals within the mortuary temples with the rhythms of the cosmos. The causeways leading from the valley temples to the pyramids, often oriented east-west, reinforced solar associations. Each ritual procession of priests and offerings moved along paths designed with celestial intent, uniting the terrestrial act of worship with the eternal cycles of the sky. The grandeur of this design suggests a vision that transcended the life of a single ruler. Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure each added their monument to a plateau already planned with symmetry and alignment. Together, their pyramids stand not as isolated tombs, but as a collective statement of cosmic order. The desert plateau became not only a necropolis, but a map of eternity, a reflection of Egypt's place within the universe, a proclamation that the king was not merely of earth, but of the stars. The obsession with the heavens did not fade with the passing of the Old Kingdom. Later dynasties shifted their tombs to the Valley of the Kings, but the celestial language endured. Tomb ceilings were painted with constellations, texts described the nightly voyage of Ra, and orientation continued to carry sacred weight. Yet no later monument equaled the grandeur of Giza, where stone itself was bent into alignment with the eternal motions of the cosmos. The Pyramids of Giza, therefore, cannot be seen merely as lifeless geometry. They are frozen astronomy, monuments to a civilization that read the sky with unmatched devotion. Their angles, shafts, and orientations testify to a knowledge that merged science and religion, architecture and cosmology, ritual and eternity. Each block, each measurement, each alignment carried meaning far beyond stone, meaning bound into the very structure of the heavens themselves. From the moment the Great Pyramid rose on the Giza Plateau, it has never ceased to ignite theories that stretch far beyond the boundaries of mainstream Egyptology. Some cling to orthodox explanations of royal tombs and funerary complexes, yet others refuse to be satisfied with such answers. These colossal monuments, so precise, so immense, and so enduring, seem to invite speculation that they must be more than just the resting places of kings. And so, throughout centuries, alternative theories have taken root, flourishing in the minds of scholars, mystics, inventors, and ordinary observers alike. One of the most persistent modern interpretations is that the pyramids were not tombs at all, but machines, vast structures designed to harness, generate, or channel energy. This idea, though often dismissed in academic circles, gained new momentum in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, when science itself was expanding into domains once thought impossible. The name of Nikola Tesla inevitably surfaces in these discussions, even though he never directly wrote about the pyramids. Tesla, fascinated by wireless energy transmission, believed that the Earth itself could conduct and resonate power. His 1905 Wardenclyffe Tower project was designed on principles of resonance, with Tesla stating that energy could be drawn from the Earth and transmitted without wires. Enthusiasts noticed uncanny similarities between Tesla's ideas and the structure of the Great Pyramid, its geometric proportions, its precise alignment to the cardinal points, and its network of chambers and shafts. They argue, without direct proof, that perhaps the pyramid functioned not as a tomb, but as a colossal energy device, tapping into natural forces of the earth. Egyptologists maintain there is no evidence to support such a claim. Yet the idea continues to fascinate, because it reflects the mystery of a monument whose internal structures still resist easy explanation. Long before Tesla's name was ever linked to the pyramids, medieval thinkers crafted their own interpretations. Early Christian and Islamic writers, unfamiliar with the hieroglyphs that would not be deciphered until 1822, often interpreted the pyramids through the lens of their own scriptures. In the medieval Islamic world, some believed the pyramids were built by the prophet Joseph to serve as granaries for Egypt, safeguarding the land during the years of famine described in the biblical book of Genesis and the Quran. The idea persisted for centuries, appearing in texts and travel accounts, shaping the way outsiders thought about these monuments. Even in Renaissance Europe, long after travelers had begun measuring and sketching the pyramids, the image of them as vast storehouses of grain survived in popular imagination. It was only with the growth of Egyptology in the 19th century, fueled by Napoleon's expedition in 1798 and Champollion's decipherment of hieroglyphs in 1822, that this interpretation lost credibility. Yet, it is a reminder of how human imagination tends to fill gaps in knowledge with narratives that fit cultural frameworks. By the 20th century, as archaeology advanced, another strand of alternative thought gained ground. The idea that the pyramids were not the product of the Old Kingdom alone, but the inheritance of a civilization far older, far more advanced, and now forgotten. This theory rests on the sheer audacity of the Great Pyramid's construction. Built around 2560 BC during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu, it originally stood 146.6 meters tall, constructed from an estimated 2.3 million blocks of limestone and granite, weighing on average 2.5 tons each. Modern engineers marvel at the precision of its orientation. Its sides deviate from true north by just a fraction of a degree. The scale, the accuracy, and the endurance of the structure seem to defy the capabilities of a Bronze Age society. Alternative theorists argue that perhaps Egypt inherited knowledge or even physical structures from a lost civilization, one that vanished long before the rise of the pharaohs. The most prominent advocates of this idea, such as Graham Hancock in the 1990s, linked the pyramids to a proposed advanced culture that may have existed during the last ice age, around 12,000 years ago. They point to weathering patterns on the Sphinx, which geologist Robert Schoch suggested could indicate water erosion, implying a far earlier date for its construction than traditionally accepted. While most Egyptologists counter that the pyramids and the Sphinx clearly fit within the cultural and technological context of the Old Kingdom, these claims resonate with those who feel the official narrative leaves too much unexplained. For them, the pyramids become evidence of a lost epoch in human history, wiped out by cataclysm, its knowledge scattered and half-forgotten. Even within these competing visions, some focus on the sheer mechanics of construction, suggesting that lost technologies, now vanished, must have been at work. Orthodox Egyptology explains pyramid building through massive labor forces, sledges, levers, ramps, and remarkable organizational ability. Yet, skeptics point to blocks weighing up to 80 tons in Khufu's king's chamber, transported from quarries at Aswan over 800 kilometers away, and question how Bronze Age tools could have managed such feats. The debate is not simply about logistics, but about the possibility that human history holds chapters of forgotten knowledge, erased by time, yet visible in the stones of Giza. The persistence of these theories cannot be separated from the allure of the pyramids themselves. Their scale overwhelms, their precision astonishes, and their survival through 4,500 years of erosion, conquest, and human interference commands respect. Alternative explanations thrive in the spaces where archaeology admits uncertainty. The pyramids lack definitive inscriptions inside their main chambers, unlike the richly decorated tombs of the Valley of the Kings built 1,000 years later. This silence fuels speculation. If they were tombs, why do they lack the funerary texts, the paintings, the treasures that accompanied later burials? Egyptologists point to the pyramid complex as a whole, the temples, causeways, and associated cemeteries, as evidence of funerary purpose. But to the unpersuaded, the emptiness within the vast stone chambers suggests a function yet to be fully understood. The allure of the alternative is strengthened by modern science itself. In 2017, a team using muon radiography announced the detection of a previously unknown void above the Grand Gallery in Khufu's pyramid. Measuring at least 30 meters long, this cavity sparked speculation. Could it be another chamber, perhaps containing something undiscovered? Egyptologists caution that voids are not unusual in massive stone structures. But for those drawn to non-orthodox theories, the revelation was fuel. Every new mystery, every unanswered question, reinforces the sense that official explanations are insufficient. These theories, whether of pyramids as energy machines, granaries, legacies of a lost civilization, or products of forgotten technologies, persist not because they are supported by evidence equal to mainstream Egyptology, but because they speak to the human hunger for mystery. They represent dissatisfaction with simple answers to extraordinary achievements. And they remind us that the pyramids, however well studied, still stand as monuments not only of stone, but of wonder, speculation, and endless human questioning. When the Great Pyramid of Khufu first stood complete on the Giza Plateau around 2560 BCE, it was already ancient before most of history's monuments had been conceived. Over 4,500 years later, it endures not only as a feat of engineering, but as the sole survivor of the seven wonders of the ancient world. Every other wonder, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the Temple of Artemis, the Colossus of Rhodes, collapsed, burned, or eroded into memory. Yet Giza remains, an immovable presence in stone, its silhouette unchanged even as empires rose and fell around it. Greek travelers in the 5th century BCE, such as Herodotus, were left in awe. Roman engineers under Augustus inspected its scale with the precision of surveyors and still conceded defeat in fully grasping its construction. Later Islamic chroniclers, like al-Makrizi in the 15th century CE, repeated stories of hidden treasures and cosmic significance, reinforcing the sense that these pyramids were never merely tombs, but monuments designed to endure beyond time. Their endurance shaped not only how humanity viewed Egypt, but how it imagined eternity itself. The geometry of the pyramid, four sloping sides converging to a single point, became a universal symbol of stability and order. In later millennia, architectural echoes appeared everywhere. Mayan pyramids at Chichen Itza, step pyramids in Mesoamerica, ziggurats in Mesopotamia, all different in function, but sharing a belief that monumental height carried divine meaning. Even in modern times, obelisks and memorials like the Washington Monument in the United States borrow from the same visual grammar first mastered at Giza. The form whispers permanence, a structure meant to connect earth and sky, mortal and divine. Religion absorbed the influence as much as architecture. Early Christian writers, living in a world where the pyramids had already stood for 4 millennia, interpreted them as symbols of wisdom from a forgotten age. In medieval Europe, travelers and crusaders carried back stories that the pyramids were the granaries of Joseph from the Hebrew Bible, misread into their faith as storehouses built to guard against famine. By the Renaissance, European artists began sketching the pyramids into biblical scenes, not as Egyptian relics, but as timeless background scenery for humanity's story. Their silhouette, rising above the desert, became shorthand for the mystery of antiquity. What archaeology has revealed in the last 2 centuries only sharpened the fascination. In 1837, Colonel Howard Weiss blasted his way into previously sealed chambers above the King's Chamber, leaving behind both discovery and destruction. Within those spaces, quarry marks bearing Khufu's name provided critical evidence tying the monument directly to his reign. In 1954, an excavation at the base of the Great Pyramid revealed a massive cedarwood ship sealed within a pit. Khufu's solar bark, 43.6 meters long, reconstructed plank by plank. Its presence spoke of resurrection, of a king intended to sail with the sun god Ra across the heavens. Technology of the 20th and 21st centuries has only pushed the fascination further. In 1965, electronic radiography was attempted to detect hidden spaces within Khufu's pyramid. In the 1980s, microgravimetry hinted at anomalies in the Great Pyramid structure. Then, in 2017, an international team using muon radiography confirmed the existence of a massive void above the Grand Gallery, an internal space 30 meters long that had never been accessed since the pyramid's completion. The void remained sealed, untouchable, its purpose unknown. Was it structural, relieving stress in the stone? Or was it intentional, a chamber hidden by design, awaiting interpretation? For the first time since Khufu's reign, humanity stood on the brink of realizing there was more within than had ever been imagined. Such discoveries fueled old questions with new urgency. Were the pyramids truly only tombs? The sarcophagus in the king's chamber was found empty, its lid missing. No mummy of Khufu has ever been recovered. No definitive funerary goods. No evidence of the body that supposedly justified such immense labor. The pyramids of later kings contained burial goods and mummies. Yet the greatest of them all, Khufu's, stood silent, stripped of its supposed inhabitant. To some scholars, this absence suggests looting. To others, it hints at a purpose that extended far beyond burial. And so the pyramids remain suspended between explanation and enigma. Archaeologists apply precision tools, ground-penetrating radar, 3D mapping, particle detectors, to probe what stone and sand have hidden for thousands of years. Each new scan widens the gap between what is known and what is speculated. Perhaps new chambers lie waiting, sealed by blocks weighing tons, undisturbed since the Bronze Age. Perhaps Khufu's void is the first of many yet to be found. Outside of archaeology, their cultural pull remains overwhelming. In the 19th century, Napoleon Bonaparte, standing before them in 1798, told his soldiers, "From the heights of these pyramids, 40 centuries look down upon you." His words were not metaphorical. They were recognition that no empire, not even his own, could claim such permanence. In the 20th century, their image became shorthand for mystery in novels, films, and public imagination. Even Nikola Tesla speculated about pyramids as energy transmitters, their form resonating with unseen cosmic power, theories still whispered on the fringes of historical debate. Yet for all the speculation, the pyramids' greatest legacy is their resistance to complete understanding. They are monuments that endure precisely because they refuse to yield their full truth. Each generation projects onto them its own fears, its own hopes, its own longing for permanence. Medieval chroniclers saw granaries, Victorians saw treasures, modern scholars see cosmic alignments, and physicists glimpse structural enigmas. The pyramids remain all of these at once, not because they change, but because their silence allows imagination to take root. As the last survivor of the ancient Seven Wonders, the Great Pyramid has outlived every narrative crafted around it. It has stood through sandstorms, invasions, earthquakes, and the erosion of time itself. Its limestone casing stones, once gleaming white in the sun, were stripped in the Middle Ages to build mosques and palaces in Cairo, yet the core remains unshaken. When the lighthouse of Alexandria collapsed into the sea, when the statue of Zeus at Olympia crumbled, when the mausoleum at Halicarnassus fell to ruins, Giza remained, its shadow stretching across centuries. Even today, when satellites map every contour of its base and drones scan its hidden chambers, the pyramids hold firm in their silence. They are not mere tombs. They are not only monuments. They are questions carved into stone, still unanswered after 4,500 years, a riddle that time itself has failed to erase.